Good night.
Would the doctor care for a brandy before retiring?
No. Thank you.
Some warm milk, perhaps?
No, thank you very much. No thanks.
Ovaltine.
Nothing. Thank you. I'm a little tired.
Then I will say good night.
Good night.
Good night, darling. Good night, Herr Doctor.
Good night, Frau Blucher.
Chris Scalzo here with
Matt Howell.
On this episode of The First Run, Matt and I, we're going to jet set around. First up, we're going to stop off in Miami, Matt, which is just a scant, I don't know, hour and a half, 2 hours away from. I'm really bad at geography. I have no idea how far Miami is.
It's way, way farther than that.
3 hours? 4?
Yeah, it's probably about 3 or 4 hours.
About a day's journey. We're going to talk about Regina King's One Night in Miami, adapted from the stage play, one of Matt's favorite source materials for films. We'll also check out Tessa Thompson in Sylvie's Love, getting rave reviews on the interwebs. We'll tell you what's coming up on physical media, featuring your straight-to-DVD and streaming picks of the week. And then, here we are. We begin our top 10 films of 2020, and what a royal mess that is going to be. We'll be going 10 through 6 today, folks. So buckle up, and let's start everything off with a clip from One Night in Miami.
I know when I'm being watched, Sam.
Boy, your paranoia is really cramping my style now. Come on, just because you can't see bugs don't mean they ain't in the house, Sam. Up on this dirty-ass roof.
Why don't you be like Bing Crosby about that shit, man, and accentuate the motherfucking positive? Look at this view.
I bet they're doing them for me. It's nice, ain't it, Malcolm?
Yeah, it's most definitely soothing, Cass. The air up here is cooler.
Far away from the prying eyes of your G-men.
Yeah, you joke all you want, Sam. I'm telling you, it's got worse since the tension between me and Mr. Muhammad. I met with a writer in New York a few weeks back. There were 2 guys following us through the airport. I swear it was the same 2.
I thought you didn't trust writers.
Oh. This one was a brother, and well, this meeting was important. I figure I better start getting my life story documented in my own words while I can.
So, Matt, what is One Night in Miami all about?
So it is the fictionalized account of a meeting with Malcom X, Cassius Clay, the future Muhammad Ali, Sam Cooke, the singer, and Jim Brown, the very famous NFL player for the Cleveland Browns.
I thought it was an actor.
Yeah, eventually. They all meet after Ali's famous defeat of Sonny Liston in the ring, where he became the world champ for the first time. And then there's a lot of talking about the nature of what it's like to be black in America in that time, and the various different viewpoints of how what it is that they're doing affects the broader scope of their people.
So, Matt, let me ask you. We know you're not the biggest fan of play adaptations to the big screen, or the small screen in this case. So let me ask you, was One Night in Miami able to surpass its trappings there and give you something you were able to enjoy?
I think it was able to give me something that I was able to enjoy, but I think my complaints from last week's show about Ma Rainey kind of carry over here. We should have put Ma Rainey and this together, so we really could have compared and contrasted the stage plays together.
True.
I think there are just flashes of brilliance in this, especially from the performances, and I think that's true of any of these stage play adaptations, that there's, you know, these monologues that carry over incredibly well if you have the right actors to the screen. But I'm sitting here watching this thing, and I'm like, and I didn't do any research about what the background of this, and I'm like, this effing thing is a stage play. I guarantee you this thing was a stage play before. I'm like, was they're all standing around in a room for like 35 minutes just talking to each other. I'm like, this was a stage play. You tricked me on a stage play again, and I looked it up, and sure enough, there it was. I mean, for me, it's just a personal preference. I think this movie has a lot going for it, and I did enjoy it, but I think my enjoyment was tempered just by the format that it is.
Fair enough. So I think it actually does a pretty good job of rising above its source material in regards to it being a stage play. And I think a lot of that goes to the credit of Regina King. This is her first theatrical, really. She's directed some television prior to this. But I think she does a great job with the staging, and that some of her shot selections, I think, really expands, I think, your focus and your viewpoint outside of where I think that Ma Rainey's Black Bottom is much more stuck in its stage play or origins. I think this one is a little more expansive, not just because we spend a lot more time outdoors and in different locations per se, but I just think it's some of her shot selections, I noticed a couple times too, her use of mirrors in the film quite often to kind of give us this kind of more of expansive view, also to show that these individuals, these actors, these people, these characters are actually looking at themselves and what perhaps their responsibilities are. And I think that, for me, is the most fascinating and interesting thing about this film, right? We're checking in on these four icons in this particular time, which was absolutely fascinating to me. They're very much in the public awareness right now, right? They have this sway and power that I think few Black people possess at that time, though, of course, they face these really strong headwinds, and for some of them, these headwinds are deadly. So they're dealing with what their responsibilities are, right? What it must feel like to have to carry the weight of your people on your shoulders, become their voice in a firmly entrenched white supremacist country at the time. And I think and I don't want to scare anybody off by me saying that. I know some people hear the words white supremacist, right? They go to the Klan. They think of neo-Nazis and stuff, but that's not it. It's not just this outsized, outward-facing evil that is white supremacy. It's also the everyday slights. And I think King does a great job of encapsulating that when we're introduced to Aldous Hodge's James Brown character, right? When he meets up with Beau Bridges there at his house, and they have that little end scene there that leaves him in the doorway a la The Searchers, but obviously for a much different reason. Well, I guess maybe not. Either way, I think it does a pretty good job of, as I said, rising above its origins, and I think it's a great concept that's done well. And I will say, I'm curious what you think about this, Matt. For the first 15 minutes or so, when I was seeing about this, and I did know ahead of time that this event did not occur, right? This never happened. That it felt initially a little fan fiction-y to me.
Mm-hmm.
But I think as the film rolls along, I think it got past that for me as I got more involved with these characters and their stories and their performances. I don't know. What do you think?
Right. I wasn't aware. So, I mean, of all of these individuals in real life, I probably know the most about Malcom X and like the Nation of Islam just from the stuff I studied in school. So I wasn't really aware. I knew he may have touched some pieces of like Ali's life, but as far as Jim Brown and Sam Cooke, I wasn't sure. So I didn't know going into it if it was how much of it was based on fact, if any of it was based on fact. But when I found out it wasn't, I think the kind of gymnastics to get all of them into the same room, to get them together, to kind of build this relationship with each other, like this kind of history of the past. It's almost like the way they stage it, it's almost like they are, I'm trying to think of something akin to it. It's kind of like this way they say that they have this deep history that you never really get into, kind of thing. It's like they're the it kids when they were older or something, like, so they're coming back together for like one last time.
Right.
And I don't really have a problem with it because I'm not like a scholar on any of these people for the most part, but yeah, I thought it was fine. I think they kind of do away with that quickly enough and move on to the meat of the topics. I think it's interesting, especially being an old man now and kind of being able to look back at the decades and kind of see how things are kind of cyclically repeating themselves. It's interesting that we're into this. We're kind of trying to relearn the events and the lessons of the past, over the past 5, years or so in film, and maybe. And it's interesting because we were in the same place, multiple times through the decades of my life. And it's just we have to keep learning the same lessons over and over and over again. So it's interesting, but I think we make incremental progress every single time it happens. So hopefully we'll make a little bit of incremental more.
Yes.
So with the current state of things, how did you react to this? Who's the of the 4 principals, who do you think pulled off the best performance?
That's interesting. I think I liked Eli Gore's as Cassius Clay, Muhammad Ali the most. I think he was. It doesn't. I don't think it quite teeters on impression more than it does performance. Right? I think he does toe that line for me. But probably Kingsley Ben-Adir is Malcolm X for me.
Yeah.
And I think he is the focus of the film for the most part. I think he is the main lead. If you were to split up percentage-wise, I'd say 27% more than the 25, perhaps, if we were to, quarter it up there. What about you?
Yeah, I think Kingsley Ben-Adir as Malcolm X has the probably most pronounced performance, but at the same time I feel like it's a bit of a cheat because it's Malcolm X that you're playing, so it's like you have a lot there to work with. I was really interested in Leslie Odom's Sam Cooke the most. I think I thought he was probably the most interesting character. I know Sam Cooke's music, but I didn't know Sam Cooke really as the person, so I think it was interesting. I think in a vacuum, I think obviously Kingsley Ben-Adir's performance is kind of like your typical, I think, lauded performance, and I think rightly so, but I think obviously just because of the man who he's playing is kind of lends a certain gravitas to that.
Yeah. So what do you think about One Night in Miami? What are you going to give it as a grade?
Okay, so like I said, I didn't super enjoy this. I think B is the right answer for me. I don't feel right giving it anything any lower, but I my own personal limitations are not going to be able to push it really any higher for me either.
Fair enough. And as always, we are poles apart. I, of course, gave it a B as well.
There you go.
So if you've got a chance to see One Night in Miami, which is currently streaming on Amazon Prime, let us know your thoughts by shooting us an email at feedback@thefirstrun.com. Matt, coming up on your physical media this upcoming Tuesday, February 2nd. Holy cow. We got to update our calendar, too. A bunch of stuff got pushed back again.
I know. I wanted to talk to you about that. How do you feel that your baby, No Time to Die, the one thing you were holding on to, got pushed back all the way into October, is it?
I think so, that or November. I don't even know. I don't know. It's just we're just going to have to stay fluid. We got to be like Ali, man. We got to be able to slide around and dodge these punches. Just stay on our feet. That's all we can really do.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we'll be hashing that out probably in short order, redoing the calendar. So you can look at it right now. It's our pinned tweet, but I don't know if I'd bother, really. So either way, let's talk, though, about what's coming up, as we said, on February. And I love to hit that R in February every time. February.
Mr. Weeboy.
Who's asking?
Margaret Blackledge. And my husband, George. If you're a Weeboy, we're family, after a fashion.
How you figure that? Bill Weeboy. A cousin, are you?
Oh, could be, but probably not exactly. Our former daughter-in-law married a Donnie Weeboy. He's stepdad to our grandson now. That's pretty tangled up, isn't it?
Family usually is.
We heard they might have come to settle here in Gladstone.
We thought we'd pay a visit, see our grandson Jimmy, since we're in the neighborhood.
Since you're in the neighborhood, and since you didn't find him up at Forsyth.
Oh, you heard we were coming, did you?
I did. A little birdie flew over your head of you. Cheep, 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 cheep.
Are they here or not?
Did you always like that in a big old hurry?
My husband likes to get down to business.
Hell of a lot of men are like that. Can't wait to get where they're going. Women, in my experience, would as soon take their time, enjoy the ride, so to speak.
Mr. Weeboy, I'm going to tell you.
I'm just funning you, George. They're here. Donnie's my nephew. They're safe and sound over at his mom's place.
So, Matt, I got to see this in the drive-in theater. It was a double bill with Freaky, which is, again, a film you're going to have to check out for the show at some point. But this is Let Him Go, featuring Ma and Pa Kent. That's right, Diane Lane and Kevin Costner. They are, as you heard, parents of a young woman who their son passes away. She marries another gentleman, but his family is not exactly on the up and up. And they go to try and find her and their grandson. And, of course, you heard Jeffrey Donovan, one of my favorite actors as well. Burn Notice, I think, is what he may be most famous for. But I'm a big Donovan fan. So I would recommend checking this out. It's kind of a neo-Western set in 1963, is it, in Montana? But it's got some great thrills in it. And if you like the kind of, not quite Taylor Sheridan film, you know, your Hell or High Waters or your Wind Rivers, it's kind of got that feel to it. In fact, I just watched Wind River again the other day. I think it's like the third time I've watched that film. I don't know. That's a great little film with Jeremy Renner if you haven't seen it. So you can check that one out. Ethan Hawke stars Matt in Tesla. Includes a behind-the-scenes making-of featurette. This, of course, is about Eli Musk and the development of the cars. That is not actually correct. It's Ethan Hawke plays actually, Tesla, the guy. Joe Manganiello stars in Arch Enemy. Matt, this is his film where he plays the guy who claims to be a hero from another dimension who fell through time and space to Earth where he has no powers. No one believes his stories except for a local team named the Hamster. Includes a making-of featurette. Love, Weddings, and Other Disasters is being released. It's a multi-story romantic comedy about the people who work on weddings to create the perfect day for a loving couple, while their own relationships are outlandish, odd, crazy, and far from perfect. Audio commentary and co-screenwriter-director Dennis Duggan included. A celebration, making love, weddings, and other disasters in the making of the film. Anthony Hopkins stars in Elise. Elise languidly meanders out of a cold concrete designer house mirroring a mausoleum, externalizing the spirit of her dead son, Cody. She returns home disoriented, unwilling to join the family dinner, misconceives the gathering as a threat to her private life, and is unwarrantably infuriated with her egocentric mother, Goldie, and her devoted husband, Stephen. In a psychotic blackout, Elise commits vehicular manslaughter of her son and his nanny, Julia. Elise isn't the only victim, though. Her delusional thinking, narcissism, and violence annihilate her husband. Memory and hallucination intertwine to expose a history of trauma, revealing the truth. The documentary The Last Blockbuster, Matt, is coming out. I'd like to check this out, which focuses on the last blockbuster left in the country.
Oh, okay.
Shudder is releasing on physical media their documentary Horror Noir, A History of Black Horror, featuring interviews with Ernest Dickerson, Rusty Cundiff, Jordan Peele, Tina Mabry, Tony Todd, and more. Shudder is also releasing Host. 6 friends hire a medium to host an online seance during lockdown, but they get far more than they bargained for as things quickly begin to go wrong. I heard that one's pretty good. They're also releasing Random Acts of Violence, written and directed and starring Jay Baruchel, along with Jordana Brewster and Jesse Williams. A pair of comic book writers begin to notice scary similarities between the character they created and horrific life events. La Casa, which I believe is Spanish for Her Case. Inspired by real events, responding to an urgent call for help, a police officer becomes trapped by the evil spirits of a cursed house. Oh, Casa's house! I knew that.
There you go. You got there.
New to Blu-ray, Kino is releasing 4 films. A Man Called Adam, featuring Sammy Davis Jr., Louis Armstrong, Ozzie Davis, Cicely Tyson, Frank Sinatra Jr., and Mel Torme. A famous jazz trumpeter finds himself unable to cope with the problems of everyday life. They're also releasing Anna Lucasta, featuring Eartha Kitt and Sammy Davis Jr. Dark Intruder featuring Leslie Nielsen, and then The Kiss Before the Mirror. Getting a 4K release, Matt, is Spike Lee's Do the Right Thing. Target has an exclusive steel book. It's a brand new 4K restoration of the film, and then a whole bunch of archival features on it. Do the Right Thing 20 years later, deleted and extended scenes, the riot sequence, 20th anniversary edition commentary, and more. I don't see a reason, though, to upgrade it from my Criterion Blu-ray, which is some top shelf stuff, folks. Also being released at Target only, a steelbook release of the 50 Shades trilogy in 4K.
Wow.
So, Matt, you can get that for the little woman this upcoming Valentine's Day. Getting put back into print, some 90s air quotes classics. Small Soldiers, Mouse Hunt, Ladybugs, Yours, Mine, and Ours, Lassie, the 94 version, Revolutionary Road, Prime, Circle of Friends, and then Kissing a Fool. There's a picture of Jason Lee on the cover of this. I suggest you all Google it because it does not look like Jason Lee at all. It is really weird. And then finally, Matt, your straight to DVD pick of the week. I've actually heard about this film prior to doing the research for this week's picks. We're going to have to incorporate it in the show, or if we ever do a Patreon feature where we talk about these straight to DVD films regularly, or maybe we just put it in the regular show, Matt. It's called Sky Sharks. Deep in the ice of the Antarctic, a team of geologists uncover an old Nazi laboratory, still intact, where dark experiments have occurred. In order to conquer the world, the Nazis create modified sharks who are able to fly and whose riders are genetically mutated undead superhumans. A military task force called the Dead Flesh 4. Did I get that right? Dead Flesh 4. Sure. Reanimated U.S. soldiers who fell in Vietnam. It was put together to prevent the world's downfall. I've seen this on the interwebs for a while now, Matt, and it looks absolutely crazy.
Well, let's not forget, we did do a marathon, and we didn't enjoy most of those movies, so they're straight to DVD for a reason.
Zombies. Which will we be streaming this week?
So, available on HBO Max is a classic seminal sci-fi show that has just come out in a upgraded format. J. Michael Straczynski's Babylon 5, which is the story of a human space station that is used as kind of a neutral ground for a bunch of aliens' cultures and negotiations. And an ancient alien race suddenly appears and kind of threatens everything. It is an absolute blast. It is a fantastic early 90s science fiction show. It's really one of the ones that push forward the idea of serializing a series, whereas literally each season of that is a further continuation of the story. It is a chapter with a beginning, middle, and end. Going into it, just be aware it was really micro budget as far as CGI goes. It is not good, but if you can just move yourself past that and watch this, I think you're going to love it for the story. It is a fantastic, underappreciated show.
I have never seen any of it, so
it's good.
I'll have to add it to the list. Good. It'll be down at the bottom. I mean, there's thousands of things on there.
Just so you'll get to it sometime when you're like 75. I think
basically,
the way your list is worked out. Yeah.
After I've watched Sky Sharks for the 5th time, we'll pop it on there. Nazi sharks that fly. How would you not want to watch that?
I know. I mean, it's a real problem in the oceans. Nazi sharks. We really should do something about that.
Yeah, it's one of my all-time Onion headlines. Is when when the dolphins learn how to make weapons. Have you ever seen that one?
No, I haven't seen that one.
It's really good. Anyway, all right, fair enough. Let's keep rolling. Let's spend a few minutes talking about Sylvie's Love.
Sylvie, what are you doing?
Walking home?
It's late. Let me take you.
No, thank you. I'm fine.
Can I ask you a question? If last night was such a mistake, why are you so bent out of shape about me dancing with somebody else?
Because, mistake or not, when a girl is kissed by a guy, she'd like to think that she's the only girl that guy's been kissing. So you carrying on with what's-her-face doesn't make me feel very special.
Well, the only reason I was carrying on with her in the first place is because of you telling me this was all a big mistake. That doesn't make me feel very special either. Matter of fact, it made me feel pretty ordinary.
Well, you're not ordinary to me. In fact, I think you're one of the most extraordinary people I've ever met.
Matt, it's New York City, 1962. Tessa Thompson is Sylvie Parker. She meets Mandis Ashamuga's Robert Holloway. And the two of them, well, they fall in love. She's in a relationship sort of at the time, and he is a struggling musician. He's a session musician. Well, I should say, he's in a quartet, excuse me, and they're about to make it big, but he also has designs perhaps on doing his own thing and having his own band. And this is basically the intertwining of their lives and their romance, and can it survive the tumultuous times? Her desire to be a television producer as well. It's lots of stuff going on, Matt. This thing has received rave reviews all over. It's on Amazon Prime as well. So, Matt, let me ask you a question. Why did I not really like this?
I'll answer that question for you. It's kind of slight. It's nothing in particular earth-shattering. It's just your typical kind of meet cute boy meets girl, old-fashioned love story. It's not like it's a rom-com or anything like that, but it just kind of has the typical beats that you would expect. I mean, two people meet from slightly different worlds. You know, they have different dreams and ambitions. One of them gives up their dreams and ambitions to kind of settle for something, discovers that's not what they want. There's family trauma, there's misunderstandings, there's other women and other men, and it's all stuff that you've seen 1,000 times before. I mean, I guess really the only novelty in this thing is that it's, you know, it's based on Black characters, and that's basically it. I mean, if you take that kind of out of it, it's not anything particularly earth-shattering.
I think that's really part of our issue, right? So it has some beautiful set design, and everything looks like it was done on a Hollywood stage / backlot, right? And that's what the director Eugene Ash is going for here. He's so focused on recreating this classic early 60s romance film, but finally introducing it to a Black audience, that I think that he loses the thread on actually telling us a compelling story. The problem is the whole thing feels like a Hallmark movie. It has all the Hallmark beats in it, where the two, they meet, there's maybe something going on, there's some misunderstandings here and there's a fight, somebody leaves, somebody comes back, and the whole thing, right? But as you said, it's very, very slight. And I think really the film suffers on Ash's focus on the aesthetics in this movie. Now, I think Tessa Thompson is luminous. I mean, she is always, I think, fantastic. But I think part of the problem, too, is I felt no chemistry between her and Ashamuga. Like, none. He was almost, for me, like a blank slate in this film. And I think that was one of the big problems I had, is I couldn't connect with it because I didn't believe them. Right? And I think that's part of my major problem with this thing. So I was actually, I think, much more interested in Sylvie's character arc. Her family, working in the record shop with her dad, her chasing her career, her relationships, being a mother, what it's like to be one of the few, if only active, female Black television producers at the time. I think that's a fascinating story that I'd like to spend some time with. Instead, we have to follow her as she falls in love with this dumb guy that can't get over his own pride, right? There's supposed to be that love finds a way, but it doesn't run away scared. If these two people would spend 5 minutes and just talk to each other, half of the conflicts and misunderstanding in this film would have been resolved with no problems. So, if I'm being generous, I focus on Ash representing these early 60s films and thinking maybe they should not be viewed with a modern critical eye. That they should be treated as these classic films were. These ethereal, slight, airy, romantic comedies, right? And if that was his goal, then I would say then this is a success for him for that. Unfortunately for me, I'm looking for a little more. I mean, it looks great. And it may stumble a bit at times with its narrative and drawing out our protagonist relationships, but it's very sweet. It's very light. It's enjoyable. Pleasant, I guess, is the best way I would describe it. But unfortunately, mostly forgettable.
Yeah, well, it's a confection. I mean, I think that's really what it is. I think you nailed the nail
Hit the nail on the head.
Yeah, hit the nail on the head.
One of those.
I was going to say the same thing. I mean, I think the big downfall of this film is it doesn't really have a main character. It doesn't have a focus. Sylvie is just like a cipher. Even though she's the nominal focus, they move through these story beats of her life, and you don't get any time to kind of breathe with them. Like, the tragedies of her family, the tragedies in her relationships, the struggles she has. She just kind of moves through these kind of signposts, and he's checking off boxes, and it's just a disservice to Tessa Thompson. I think she does as best as she can with what she's got, but yeah, it really feels like there could have been a lot more there, but they just didn't focus on the right things, in my opinion.
But what do you think, though, if you watch it through that 50s, 60s prism? I mean, now granted, you have something like The Apartment, which is wonderful and also very dark and some heavy stuff at times. But if you look at it through that spectrum of this, as you say, confectionery 60s tribute lens, does that improve its status with you at all?
I don't really know, because I'm not one to, as many of thousands of movies as I've watched, I'm not one to watch that type of film. So I don't feel like I'm any kind of expert on it. If I've seen any of those films, they're really like the absolute best of what they have to offer. And this doesn't hold a candle to that. So yeah. I can't really say. I really don't know.
Fair enough. In the end, Matt, I gave Sylvie's Love a C+, and I think mostly based on the aesthetics of the film. As I said, he does a great job of bringing that Hollywood backlot thing to life. And if you know what that aesthetic is and you can appreciate it, I think it's great. There's also some use of, I don't think it's stock footage, perhaps, maybe it is, but it's made to look like that at times with some of our aerial views. Some of the film looks distressed with some scratches and pops and stuff every now and then, right? So aesthetically, I think it's great. It looks great, and as I said, Thompson is fantastic in it, but I think it's the best I can go, C+.
Yeah, I mean, again, Worlds Away, that's what I'm going to give it as well. I think I'm giving it a bit of a curve just by how good it looks. I think the effort put into this thing, but it's not great. I can't see myself revisiting this thing.
Same, which is too bad. I do love me a nice romance film every now and then. All right. I mean, look at my affection for The Portrait of a Lady on Fire from last year. I'm still raving about that thing every chance I get. So
you still are. And I think, to be fair, I think that's because there's been very little that rises to some of that. But we're going to talk about that, right? Nice segue.
There you go. You are the king of the segues. So let's jump right into it, Matt. 10 through 6 of our favorite films of 2020.
I went to his house today.
You went to Adrian's house?
Yes. I just walked right in. I found something that can prove what I'm experiencing. That can prove that Adrian is stalking me.
What is it?
It's some kind of suit that Adrian has built. And it has cameras, and it somehow... What?
There you go, Matt. Didn't quite make the cut for me. Boom, boom. Lee Whannell's The Invisible Man remake from 2020. A great little thriller, a nice twist and turn on the Invisible Man mythos. One of my favorite of those classic Universal horror films is The Invisible Man. That and The Mummy, too, I'm a big fan of. So, but didn't quite make the cut. Though maybe when we get around the performances at some point, Ms. Moss may make the cut for me there. Who knows? So, Matt, why don't you go ahead and start everything off? What was your 10th favorite film of 2020?
All right, so this is what I did for this. 2020 was a really weird year. So I went back on the report card, and because I'm a man of integrity, I looked at anything that I gave an A to a B+, and that was in contention. So Here we go. We'll see how long it takes for Chris to yell at me. My number 10 then is going to be my one genre horror entry into this. No, I guess not. Is His House, about a African refugee and his wife. I forget what country they're from. They move to England to escape the persecution that's happening in their own country. They lose their daughter along the way, and he suddenly starts to see something supernatural in the house that he's been given by the British government. Very creepy film, a really interesting approach. I thought the acting in it was fantastic. I think it was probably maybe one of the most successful horror films that we had from 2020.
Yeah, I agree with you. In fact, Mac, it was South Sudan, in case you're wondering. And the reason why I know that is that his house was my number 10 as well.
Oh, look at that.
A great little thriller, I believe, from the UK, and dealing with it's not just a haunted house film, right? Mm-hmm. But it's also more about the experience of refugees fleeing from these war-torn areas, the things that haunt them as they try and rebuild their lives. So, yeah, you said most of what I would say about it. It is exceptionally creepy and scary. One of the more, as you said, successful efforts from last year. So it's my number 10 as well. I really thought about doing a double bill and cheating, going this with Underwater as another horror film, because I really liked Underwater, especially with that reveal at the end as to who the monster is, which I will not spoil for you right now. So
yeah. All right. So first shot of Chris maybe possibly yelling at me. So my number 9 then is maybe recency bias, and maybe I'll like it more as I get some more distance from it. But it's the one we reviewed from a couple of weeks ago, Promising Young Woman, starring Carey Mulligan as a young woman who is tortured from an event that happened in her past, and she goes out and decides to give revenge to those that she deems worthy of it. I thought it was a really interesting take on the revenge genre. I like what it has to say as far as the kind of price of revenge, which you never really see in a lot of these types of films. So it's my number 9 film.
Number 9.
Yeah.
Out of 10.
Out of 10, yes.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. My number 9 then is the Brazilian import Bacurau, which we just did a couple weeks ago. There is this village, Matt. They're just kind of in the Serra Verde area, and they are basically just kind of very isolated, kind of getting by, dealing with stuff that happens in their own lives. And all of a sudden they find out that their village has been erased off all the maps on the internet. And then strange things start to happen to them, and they must band together in order to survive. And I don't think that really even begins to describe what this movie is about. So it's currently streaming on the Criterion Channel. Bacurau is a weird, creepy, fun little movie with some thoughts on imperialism. Really just an interesting watch. One of the more fascinating discoveries I think we had in 2020. So, and of course, Udo Kier doing his Udo Kier stuff.
Yeah, I really enjoyed Bacurau. It didn't make my list just because, one, I wasn't quite sure when it officially came out. Like, I wasn't sure if it was a 2019 movie masquerading as a 2020 movie, so I didn't include it in the contention. And just looking at the list that I had, I edged it out, although that ruins my integrity because I think I gave that film an A. So
yes, you did. And Cannes released in 2019, Brazil in 2019, and then France in 2019. I didn't hit the Criterion Channel domestically, I think, until this year. And I think, given COVID, I'm getting everything a pass for this year, right? I think it's... Plus, we haven't had an opportunity to see, at least I haven't, Nomadland, Beanpole, Minari, Pieces of a Woman, The Sun, and, of course, whatever indie darling, dear listener, that you loved this past year. But, yeah, there's a lot of stuff I didn't get a chance to see that's going to bleed because it got pushed into this year. Sure. So I'm going to count, like Nomadland, I'm going to count as a 2021 film, all right, when I see it. You can all do what you're gonna do, but yeah. So yeah, it's Vegas. It's Nam. There are no rules this year.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So you gave Bacurau an A as well.
Yes.
An A.
Yes.
And it's your ninth favorite film.
Well, again, remember we've changed how we do things here. It's my 10 favorite films.
Oh, your 10 favorite films.
Yes.
Then I don't feel bad about my Promising Young Woman.
Well, you should
selection. I don't. All right. So my number 8 is Sound of Metal. Riz Ahmed. He plays the biggest air quotes possible metal drummer in a band who suddenly loses his hearing. This movie lives and dies on his performance, really, and I think he's exceptionally well suited to it. I love the kind of sound design of this film, the things that they play with. I think the bittersweet ending of that relationship in this is just so fantastic that it really is a bit of a gut punch, but you can't be mad about it at the same time. So I think it was a fantastic film. So it's my number 8.
There you go. Honorable mention for me. Didn't quite make the cut there, Matt. So
okay.
But my number 8 then, Pete Docter does it again. And that is Pixar's Soul. All right.
Number 8.
Number 8. I'm assuming it's much higher for you. Jamie Foxx is Joe Gardner. He's a jazz pianist who, after years of struggling, he's now a teacher. He finally perhaps gets the big break he's been looking for, and unfortunately he meets with a unexpected end. But perhaps he's going to be able to get another chance. And this is his journey trying to get back into his body as he meets some fun, crazy, kooky characters along the way. And it's, again, Pixar doing another meditation, this time on death, grieving, acceptance, and doing it exceptionally well, as they always do. Taking these really tight, difficult subjects, heavy stuff, and making it all access, all ages, for everybody to understand, appreciate, and to laugh and cry. That's my 8.
All right. Well, my number 8 is my favorite comedy of the year. It's Palm Springs, starring Kristen Milioti and Andy Samberg, where you get into this kind of Groundhog Day situation where Andy Samberg, for reasons unknown, decides he gets caught in a time loop and he spends the same wedding day after day after day, any number of times, and then he traps Kristen Milioti in there inadvertently with him, and they develop a budding relationship. It's funny, it's sweet. It's probably maybe one of the most fun I've had at the films this year. I mean, that's probably saying something. And out of even every film we watched, I can see myself watching this, again in the future.
I agree. Palm Springs is my number 7, actually. I agree with you entirely.
That's my number 7 as well.
So there you go.
Yeah.
Teams up. That's right. Wonder Twin Powers activate. But I was never the big Samberg fan, too. I was never a huge fan of his, especially on the SNL days. I still haven't seen Hot Rod, but he won me over with Pop Star, Never Stop Stoppin'. I found that film to be hilarious. Criminally underappreciated, I think. So watching Palm Springs, listen, I think it's the best of these type of time loop movies since Groundhog Day. It is exceptionally funny with a really sweet heart in it. And Samberg and Milioti really kind of pull that off. There's some real emotion here with their relationship and the two of them as they get to know each other and as we get some curveballs thrown at us as the story progresses. Plus, J.K. Simmons plays just an awesome, crazy old guy who also has some nice moments as well. So, yeah, it's not just funny and weird, but touching as well. So it's my number 7.
All right. Well, my number 6 is going to be a contentious pick, especially for Chris. He's going to roll his eyes at me. But my number 6 is the first Pixar film of this year, which was Onward. Stars essentially Chris Pratt and Tom Holland. They play a pair of brothers in this kind of magical world where there's like elves and dragons and ogres and stuff like that, where magic has been forgotten, and they discover some real magic to bring back their father. And for one last night, they go on a D&D style quest, which is right in my wheelhouse while they do this. And they try and kind of bring their father back so they can spend some time with him. And I thought it was an exceptionally moving story as far as the kind of, bond between the fathers and their children. I really appreciated just the kind of trappings of the fantasy world and cliches and D&D. I had a lot of fun with it, so it's my number 6.
I disagree, Gary.
Yeah, I know I think that part of it is that you're a D&D guy and you're a father, so you have a lot more to connect with in that film than I did. Mm-hmm. I was underwhelmed by that film, except for the ending. I think it absolutely nails the ending, but outside of that, I found it kind of underwhelming. So my number 6 then came out. Well, it was released at Telluride Film Festival in 2019, but didn't get its domestic release here in the States until January 31st. And that is Kitty Green's The Assistant, featuring Julia Garner, where basically it's a not quite fictionalized version of the Weinstein affair. And it is one of the more tense experiences you will have at the theater, or at least at home, I guess, at this point. Now Garner plays a new production assistant or assistant for this film production company, and she starts off basically just, running errands, collating stuff, stapling, getting coffee and things. But she starts to hear things happening And then she goes to report what she finds out to HR, has a horrible experience, and it's her dealing with having her dream job and finding out that it's absolutely hell. So I really loved The Assistant, and I thought Garner was fantastic in it. So you should definitely check that out, and that's my number 6.
All right. Well, that's it.
That was quick and easy, huh?
Yeah, it was.
So 5 films to go. What's going to make the cut? Matt hasn't mentioned Borat yet. I know you love the 40-year-old version. I don't know. Lots to come up next. So who knows? Maybe I'll find a way to see Nomadland in time, and I can squeeze it in. But then I'd have to move stuff out. So I know there's one film on my list that I don't think Matt's seen any yet. So we're going to have at least one surprise likely next week.
Okay.
We'll see how that shakes out. I got a feeling that, again, you and I are going to be pretty close. I think that's more a testament to just how weak a year it's been, unfortunately, in 2020. True. There's been some solid stuff and a couple, dare I say, exceptional films. But I think that's really, for me, I could almost, my 10 through 6, Matt, put them in almost any order, really. Right. I think it's my 5 through 1s where we get super serious about this stuff.
This is when it gets real, guys.
Yeah. That's it. You get a bunch of people living together in a house, and they stop playing around or having fun, and things get real. However that Real World thing went. I never watched it.
There you go. Yeah.
That was too hip. Next week, Matt, I don't even know what the hell we're doing next week. Do you know? What is it?
Little Things, I think. The new Denzel thing that's coming out.
Rami Malek and Jared Leto, the Joker himself.
Yeah.
Boy, that's going to be a disaster. I don't think the thing's going to be good at all. I don't know what it is. I got this weird vibe that it is going to be bad, but we'll see. It is playing theatrically, and it is going to be on HBO Max. Right. So we'll have to see how that shakes out. Oh, wait, I have Black Bear on here, though. But if the Little Things is coming out, we can move that around.
Black Bear's not. We'd still have to pay for it, I think.
Okay, so we'll move.
Stream Black Bear.
So if Little Things is here, we'll do Little Things. Then Wolfwalkers, which I believe is on Apple.
Yeah, it is.
So we could animated film. I started watching Ted Lasso. Exceptional.
Okay.
So if you have Apple TV, I would highly recommend that as well. Anyway, you want to catch up with us on the social medias, you can find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Do a search for The First Run. Scroll. Eventually you will find us. If you want to go ahead and invest in GameStop or AMC, I guess now is the time to do it, right? Or not, actually. Check us out, of course, at thefirstrun.com. Also, if you want to help out the show, go over to Apple Podcasts, give us a review. We'll read it on the air and help other people find the show. And that's going to be it this week, Matt. But I will say we have an extended outro this week because I did mention Borat. I don't know if it's going to be in my top 5. Maybe it'll be in Matt's, but enjoy.
Obama was a traitor. America, he hated. He belonged inside the jails. I ain't lying, it ain't no jokes. Corona is a liberal hoax. Corona is a liberal hoax. Obama, what we gotta do? Inject him with the Wuhan flu. Inject him with the Wuhan flu. Let's hear it. Dr. Fauci, what we gonna do? Inject him with